They don't want you connecting these dots. The Minnesota daycare fraud, foreign student programs, money vanishing into thin air. Look, I'm just a commentator, breaking this down, giving you my take on the patterns I'm seeing. But here's what bothers me. If certain people had won this election,
you have to stay woke. Like, everybody needs to be woke.
we probably never would have heard about Minnesota at all. And that should terrify you, because it means there's fraud happening right now that we're completely blind to. So today I want to share my thoughts on what we're missing. Let's dive right in.
Alarm, password, dive.
Dive.
This one makes you want to throw up in a potted plant. Makes me want to stick my head in an oven. So they started going to parents in the Somali community and saying, can we call your child autistic? Can we certify that your child is autistic? If you'll let us do that, we'll pay you a bribe. Anywhere from $400 to $1,500 a child. It's deeply disgusting. I mean, it is clown world on steroids. It makes me want to knee someone in the groin. But the politicians in Minnesota let this happen. It is disgusting, Mr. President. These people ought to all be put in jail, including the politicians. To the powers that be, pretty please, with sugar on top. I'll add a cherry. I've even got an old McDonald's McRibs coupon somewhere. I'll throw that in the mix too.
So what you just saw there was Senator John Kennedy out of Louisiana. And this is going back to December the 3rd of 2025. And Kennedy said federal prosecutors uncovered $1 billion or more in welfare fraud across 3 schemes: Feeding Our Future, the Child Nutrition Money, a homeless housing nonprofit, and funding for childcare and these autism services. So this was weeks before the Nick Shirley video. And for some reason, Senator John Kennedy was ignored on the floor of the Senate. And he talks a little bit about how state employees actually raised red flags and came forward as whistleblowers. But they were blocked by political leadership. They were blocked by the governor's office, because they didn't want this information to come out. Now, what this tells me is that there's more to this, and it's not just isolated to Minnesota. It also tells me that people intentionally covered this up because they used accusations of racism to stifle and to quiet, to shut down the whistleblowers. He said in this speech that enforcement was softened because leaders believed aggressive action would cause a political backlash. Kennedy went on into it about how taxpayers and the theft had been diverted from helping people who were truly hungry, homeless, and needed autism services to this newly established voter base that the Democrat Party, or let's just say one political party, has come to rely on. And that even some money has gone to Al-Shabaab, a horrible organization that likes to do bad things to Americans. Now, this is all political. And you can see now that what you're seeing right now, what you're seeing right now is the tip of the iceberg. You and I both know there are other mechanisms in place. There are other problems across the country. What you're seeing right now is the tip of the iceberg. There are other states that are starting to wake up. Just think of all these states and cities that are trying to keep ICE out, that are trying to keep the federal government out because they don't want any more of this information coming to light. Let's talk about Chicago. Let's talk about California. Let's talk about Portland, Oregon. Seattle, Washington. All these sanctuary cities that don't want the federal government to come in and meddle around. We don't want any of those nosy kids there because they might find something that they shouldn't. The fastest way to fix all of this is cut off the money. And that's exactly what they're doing in Minnesota.
Allegations of extensive fraud in Minnesota's child care programs. We believe the state of Minnesota has allowed scammers and fake daycares to siphon millions of taxpayer dollars over the past decade.
My office, ACF, provides Minnesota $185 million in child care funds each year. That money should be helping 19,000 American children, including toddlers and infants. Any dollar stolen by fraudsters is stolen from those children. Yesterday, I spoke directly with the director of the Minnesota Child Care Services Office. She could not tell me with confidence whether those allegations of fraud are isolated or whether...
That's a problem. When the director of the program can't give an answer to the federal government about where the money's going, we have deeper problems.
Taken 3 direct actions against the blatant fraud that seems to be rampant in Minnesota. I have activated our Defend the Spend system for all ACF child care payments across America. Require a justification, receipt, or photo evidence before we make a payment. I have just signed and sent a demand letter to Governor Walz.
And third, we've launched a dedicated fraud reporting hotline and email address at childcare.gov.
Regardless of rank or office, anyone who's involved in perpetrating this fraud against the American people should expect to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
For anyone saying that there's no response from the Trump administration, you just witnessed here. They cut off the fraud. They cut off the money. They are cutting off the supply line. They are patching the leak. And then they're going to send these auditors, these little bean counters with tape on their glasses, in to go and find every morsel of money. Could it take some time? Yes. Are certain people in Minnesota panicking? Absolutely. Why have you not heard anything from, let's say, left-wing news media? I haven't heard anything from the Squad. I haven't heard anything from AOC, Rashida Tlaib. I haven't heard anything from Cory Booker. I've not seen any, strongly worded tweets from the Clintons. I haven't seen that. And their silence is deafening because the money train has suddenly stopped a few stops short of where they wanted to dump the cash. I'd love to get your comments down below. Do you think this is the tip of the iceberg? Do you think there is more to find? Is this a scratch and sniff sticker? Because I believe it is, and it smells like shit. And we are going to get to the bottom of it. We will not let this rest.
But I also was on the ticket, quite honestly, because I could code talk to white guys watching football, fixing their truck, doing that I could put them at ease. I was the permission structure to say, look, you can do this and vote for this.
Look, it's not law-abiding citizens. If that were the case, there's a lot of white men should be holding a lot of white men accountable for the crimes that they have committed. And, for every crime, which of course the majority being committed by white men, asking us to do more about that, I think it's crime in general.
Are you starting to understand now why Tim Walz was picked? Because this was a hotbed in Minnesota. I believe Kamala Harris, or whoever told her to pick Tim Walz, knew exactly what they were doing. They knew exactly what they were covering up. They knew exactly what they didn't want the American people to know. And now that we know, how many of you think that Governor Tim Walz should be investigated fully, should be called to resign, should be impeached, should be prosecuted, should be brought before a Senate Judiciary Committee, before Congress, and questioned on live TV? Because right here, he said he's going to interpret for the white guys. You remember that white guys for Harris crap? And then on the other side of the coin, he says, the Somali fraud, if you're trying to find this out, well, you're obviously a racist. Is that what you wanted as a vice president? One heartbeat away from sitting behind the Resolute desk. When will Democrats publicly come out and disavow this? I've not seen it.
I'm telling you right now, Kamala knew what she was doing when she picked Tim Walz as VP. She knew running for president wasn't about running for president for them. It was about expanding their operation. The governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, changed the state flag to ironically resemble the Somali flag. And now, people in other blue states are investigating their own child care centers and their own adult care centers and seeing the same pattern. The fraud is going to be so extensive, so widespread, nationwide, they're not going to have the resources to shut it down. They're going to have to call in the military. Tribunals 2026 is coming.
Is she right? Is the fraud so wide and so big that the federal government, the Department of Justice, just doesn't have enough attorneys to handle this? Tribunals 2026? Do we need to use the military to root this out? Is that the only answer? Is that the final move? It very well could be, because a lot of these politicians, a lot of these attorneys, a lot of these investigators have checkered past and weird connections. This lady could very well be right. But she brings up a great point right at the very beginning of that clip. Kamala Harris knew what she was doing. Do you believe that? I don't believe in coincidences. I don't believe this vice presidential candidate that could barely string together a couple of words off of a teleprompter then suddenly plucks the Minnesota governor out of nowhere with his jazzy hands to run for VP. Were there some incentives in there? Were there some transactions? Did someone maybe pay for their name to be put on the ticket? Who benefited the most out of this if Tim Walz and Kamala could have won? Was al-Shabaab going to benefit from this? Would Mogadishu or Somalia benefit more? Could we have expected millions and millions and millions more of Somalian refugees to be brought here to the United States, to other states, maybe to red states, to help flip it blue? That could very well have been the plan. We don't know yet, but I believe we're going to find out. Look, I spent years on a submarine when missing one detail, one warning sign. Maybe you didn't check the level on a gauge, could cost everyone their lives. You learn to see what others miss. You learn to question what you're being told. And right now I'm seeing patterns that most people are walking right past. This is just the beginning. There are more dots to connect, more fraud to uncover, and more questions that need answers. If you want my continued analysis on what's really happening, the kind of breakdown you won't get from the mainstream media, hit that subscribe button. I'm bringing a veteran's perspective to the stories they hope you'll ignore, because the truth is they're counting on you not paying attention. Don't give them that satisfaction. Subscribe and let's keep diving together. My next video, I'm going to look further into some of the Department of Education fraud. Remember that department that the Democrat Party didn't want to get rid of? I wonder how much money has been maybe swept under the rug there. I'll see you.